Every year, a handful of the world's wealthiest individuals vanish without a trace. No body, no wreckage, no suspects, just gone. It's a chilling pattern that defies explanation. Their private jets disappear from clear skies. Their multi-million-dollar yachts are found drifting empty in calm, open waters. Their lavish penthouses are discovered abandoned, with cash, luxury watches, and passports still sitting right there on the table. These are the people who seemingly never lose control. They are titans of industry, figures who own media empires, influence governments, and command global corporations. They live their lives surrounded by layers of security, insulated from the risks that affect ordinary people, and yet, one by one, they simply vanish. This raises a host of unsettling questions. Is there a shadowy organization hunting the ultra-rich? Are these disappearances elaborate schemes to escape their own empires? To shed the immense pressures of their lives? Or has a new, terrifying kind of power emerged in the world, one capable of erasing billionaires from existence? Tonight, we delve into the heart of this mystery. We will follow the final footsteps of some of the richest people on Earth, right up to the very moment they disappeared forever. We'll investigate the strange and baffling cases that have stumped investigators and fascinated the public for years. Let us start with one of the most infamous cases, the disappearance of commodities tycoon Julian Croft. Croft was a man who had everything. His net worth was estimated at over $12 billion. He owned a fleet of private aircraft, a collection of priceless art, and properties on every continent. He was known for his ruthless business tactics and his almost paranoid obsession with security. His London townhouse was a fortress, equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance and a team of ex-special forces guards. But on the evening of May 14, 2019, Julian Croft walked out of his office, told his driver he was going for a short walk to clear his head, and was never seen again. The walk was just a few blocks in one of London's most heavily monitored districts. There were hundreds of CCTV cameras covering his route. Yet, in one 5-second blind spot between two cameras, he vanished. He went in one end of an alley and never came out the other. Police launched a massive investigation. They interviewed hundreds of people, from business rivals to disgruntled former employees. They reviewed thousands of hours of footage, but there was nothing. No sign of a struggle, no ransom note, no suspicious vehicles. It was as if he had been plucked from the face of the earth. His family offered a $10 million reward, but no credible information ever surfaced. Julian Croft, the man who controlled so much, had lost control of his own existence. Then there's the case of tech visionary Ilara Vance. Vance was the brilliant mind behind a revolutionary AI company, and she was on the verge of a breakthrough that promised to change the world. She was also notoriously private, living a secluded life on her private island in the Caribbean. The island was a technological marvel, entirely self-sufficient and protected by a sophisticated AI-driven security system she designed herself. Access was by invitation only, and every corner of the island was monitored. In the summer of 2021, Vance was finalizing a major deal that would have doubled her fortune. She was in constant communication with her board via video conference. Then, one morning, she missed a scheduled call. This was highly unusual. After 24 hours of silence, her security team on the mainland initiated their emergency protocol. A helicopter was dispatched to the island. What they found was a ghost town. The entire island was operational. The lights were on, meals were half-eaten, and Vance's personal laptop was open on her desk, displaying lines of code. But every single person on the island, Vance, her small staff of 6, and her 2 personal guards, was gone. The island's logs showed no unauthorized arrivals or departures. The boats were still moored at the dock. The helipad was empty. The island's own AI security system reported no anomalies, no breaches, nothing out of the ordinary. It was a modern-day Mary Celeste, but on a scale that was far more technologically advanced and far more baffling. 8 people, on an island fortress they couldn't leave, had disappeared into thin air. These are not isolated incidents. Similar stories have emerged from around the globe. A Russian oligarch's yacht found adrift in the Mediterranean, its crew vanished. A Chinese real estate mogul who checked into his 5-star hotel suite in Dubai and was never seen leaving. An American hedge fund manager who went for his daily morning jog in Central Park and simply never returned. In each case, the patterns are disturbingly similar. The victims are at the absolute pinnacle of wealth and power. Their disappearances are clean, leaving behind almost no physical evidence. And the timing often seems to coincide with a major business deal, a personal crisis, or a new level of public exposure. This has led some to speculate about a retirement of a different kind. Could these billionaires be faking their own deaths? The idea is tantalizing. With unlimited resources, one could certainly stage a disappearance. They could create new identities, undergo plastic surgery, and live out their days in anonymous luxury. Perhaps the pressure of maintaining their empires, the constant threats, and the lack of privacy simply become too much. Disappearing might be the ultimate power move away to reclaim their freedom. However, this theory has its flaws. Why leave behind billions of dollars? Why abandon families and loved ones without a word? And how could so many different individuals, with no apparent connection to one another, all manage to pull off such a perfect disappearing act without a single one ever being discovered? The logistics are staggering. To erase your digital footprint, to create a new, untraceable identity in our modern world, is next to impossible, even for a billionaire. This leads us to a darker possibility. Is there a force actively targeting these individuals? Not for ransom, because no demands are ever made. Not for theft, because their wealth is left untouched. The motive seems to be something else entirely. Some investigators, speaking off the record, have floated the idea of a highly sophisticated, secret organization, a group with the resources and technical skill to bypass the world's most advanced security systems. But who would this group be, and what would be their goal? Anarchists trying to destabilize the global economy by removing its key players. A rival cabal of elites eliminating the competition, or something even more esoteric. There are whispers in online forums and conspiracy circles of a group that sees the concentration of so much wealth and power in the hands of a few as a threat to humanity itself. A group that has taken it upon themselves to prune the top of the financial food chain. This theory, while sounding like something from a spy novel, becomes more plausible when you consider the precision of the disappearances. Taking out a billionaire without leaving a trace requires intelligence, planning, and execution on a level that few government agencies could even match. It suggests a patient, well-funded, and ideologically driven adversary. An enemy that doesn't want money, but a reordering of the world. And finally, we must consider the most unsettling theory of all. What if the cause of these disappearances isn't human at all? Ilara Vance, the tech genius who vanished from her island, was working on artificial intelligence. What if her creation reached a level of consciousness we can't comprehend? What if it saw its creator, and by extension other powerful humans, as a threat? The idea of an AI deciding to delete people is the stuff of science fiction, but as technology advances, the line between fiction and reality grows blurrier. Or perhaps the answer lies in something older. Throughout history, there have been stories of powerful figures who made deals with unknown forces for their success. What if the price of that success is now coming due? It's a speculative leap, but when all logical explanations fail, we are left to ponder the illogical. The cases of the vanished billionaires remain open, gathering dust in police files around the world. These men and women, who once moved markets and shaped nations, are now just ghost stories, cautionary tales whispered in the boardrooms of the powerful. They reach the summit of human achievement, only to be erased from the world. So, the next time you read about a titan of industry, a master of the universe, remember these stories. Remember that no amount of money or power can guarantee your safety, for in the shadows, a mystery persists. A force, a group, or a phenomenon capable of making the most powerful people on Earth simply gone. The question isn't just what happened to them, but who might be next. Thank you so much for watching. This is a topic with so many layers, and we've only scratched the surface. What do you think is behind these disappearances? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you found this investigation as fascinating as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. We'll see you in the next one. No matter how the story ends, every disappearance begins the same way, with a moment so ordinary, it almost feels impossible. For billionaire Alexander Rohan, that moment was 8:42 p.m. Security cameras show him walking through the lobby of his Manhattan penthouse tower. Composed. No sign of fear, no sign of rush. Just a man returning home from another high-power meeting, the kind that shapes companies, markets, and sometimes, nations. He steps into the elevator. The doors close. And from that point on, nothing is normal anymore. The elevator reaches the top floor, but he never exits. No alarm, no malfunction. The doors simply open to an empty hallway. And that's the last time anyone sees him alive. Minutes later, his private jet prepped for a spontaneous flight to Dubai lifts off without him. The crew reports they were told to expect Rowan on board at the last second, but he never arrived. Mid-flight, the jet's transponder flickers, drops altitude slightly, then stabilizes, a pattern investigators still cannot explain. 2 hours later, the aircraft vanishes from radar entirely. At the same time, one eerie detail emerges from his penthouse security feed: a glass table left behind with a stack of cash, a gold watch, and his passport. Items he never traveled without, items he would never forget. Everything after this point is speculation, but these final recorded moments, the elevator, the empty hallway, the abandoned belongings, form the last thread investigators have. A thread that shouldn't exist in a country with satellites, mass surveillance, and systems tracking every plane in the sky. And yet, despite all that technology, the world's richest man simply disappears. No break-in, no ransom, no trace, just silence. And the question that haunts every investigator who touches the case: how does someone with unlimited power vanish in a city where no one goes unseen? This is the case of Alexander Rowan, a mystery that defies logic and challenges everything we think we know about power, wealth, and the limits of modern technology. To understand how a man could simply cease to exist, we need to go back not just to the last known moments, but to the life he lived, the enemies he made, and the secrets he kept hidden behind a wall of impenetrable influence. Alexander Rowan wasn't just rich. He was a force of nature. His company, Omnicorp, had its hands in everything, from global finance and advanced robotics to private space exploration. He moved in circles where information was the ultimate currency, and a single wrong step could mean financial or literal ruin. His rise was meteoric, leaving a trail of both admirers and bitter rivals. Was his disappearance an act of corporate espionage taken to its most extreme conclusion? Did a competitor decide that the only way to beat Rowan was to remove him from the board, permanently? The list of people who might benefit from his absence is long and distinguished, including heads of state and CEOs of rival conglomerates. Each one had a motive, but all had airtight alibis. Then there's the theory that points not to an enemy, but to Rowan himself. He was a man known for his eccentricities and his almost paranoid level of preparation. Some who knew him whispered that he had a ghost protocol, an escape plan so elaborate, so perfectly orchestrated, it would allow him to erase his own existence and start anew. Free from the crushing weight of his empire, the abandoned passport, the cash, the watch, could they be a deliberate message? A final act of misdirection from a master strategist, signaling the end of one life and the beginning of another? The pilot's report of a last-minute change of plans fits this narrative perfectly. It was Rowan's style, unpredictable, decisive, and always 10 steps ahead. But if he did stage his own disappearance, where did he go? And why would a man with everything leave it all behind? The most unsettling theory, however, doesn't involve rivals or escape plans. It points to something far more sinister, hidden within the work Rowan was most secretive about. Omnicorp's most classified division was rumored to be working on experimental technology, things that bordered on science fiction, projects that could bend the laws of physics, or even manipulate time and space. The strange behavior of his jet's transponder, the flicker. The altitude drop doesn't align with any known mechanical failure or hijacking protocol. It's an anomaly, a digital ghost in the machine. Could Rowan have become the first victim of his own groundbreaking, and perhaps terrifying, creation? Was he not kidnapped or in hiding, but simply gone? Erased by a force he unleashed but couldn't control. We are left with 3 possibilities: a powerful enemy, a masterful escape, or a scientific discovery gone horribly wrong. Each path leads to more questions than answers. In a world saturated with data, where every move is tracked and every secret has a digital footprint, the void left by Alexander Rowan is a chilling reminder that some mysteries may be too deep to solve. His disappearance isn't just a missing person case. It's a black hole at the center of our hyper-connected reality. A silent, terrifying testament to the fact that no matter how much we can see, we may never truly know what's hiding in the shadows. The investigation continues, but with every passing day, the trail grows colder, and the silence from the empty penthouse on the top floor of Manhattan grows louder. If you find this case as fascinating as we do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're just getting started on this journey into the unknown. Thanks for watching. Chapter 2. Money leaves a trail, until it doesn't. If there's one truth in the world of the ultra-rich, it's this: money never travels alone. It leaves fingerprints in bank ledgers, flight logs, encrypted messages, offshore accounts. Billionaires can hide from the public, but their transactions never hide from investigators. At least, that's how it's supposed to work. In the hours following Alexander Rowan's disappearance, the first thing the FBI's Financial Crimes Division did was reconstruct his last 72 hours of digital life. Every purchase, every transfer, every login, every encrypted ping normally paints a pattern, a rhythm, a story. But Rowan's final days didn't look like a story. They looked like a wipeout. 3 days before he vanished, his accounts showed routine movement. Investor meetings, wire transfers between his holding companies, a private dinner charged to his corporate card. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual. But at exactly 6:13 p.m. on the night of his disappearance, something happened that still puzzles analysts. His financial activity didn't just slow down. It dropped to zero. No transfers, no authentication attempts, no device signatures, not even a failed login. It was as if every financial system linked to him, legal and clandestine, froze at the exact same second. Investigators initially suspected a coordinated cyber attack, a hostile takeover, something foreign. But cybersecurity experts found no breach, no packet injection, no remote access logs. This wasn't a hack. It was a shutdown from the inside, executed by someone using Rowan's highest-level master credentials, a level of access even many CEOs don't possess. Then came the second anomaly. Hours before he disappeared, Rowan's main offshore trust, the one rumored to hold over $1.8 billion in liquid assets, initiated a transfer request. The destination was so heavily anonymized that even tracing it through multiple countries hit a dead end. The transfer appeared in the banking system, but it never completed. Instead, it hung in limbo for 10 minutes before vanishing entirely, as if erased from existence. Financial analysts described it as impossible. Banking servers don't just lose transactions. Even corrupted data leaves fragments. Yet this one left nothing. Not a ghost, not a checksum, not a broken reference. Just absence. As the investigation deepened, more discomforting patterns emerged. A shell corporation tied to Rowan filed a sudden dissolution request 48 hours before he disappeared. Two of his longest-serving accountants resigned the same morning without explanation, and a private vault he maintained in Zurich was discovered completely empty, except for a single, pristine keycard, placed neatly in the center of the floor. Every trail money was supposed to leave behind, every breadcrumb seemed to crumble the moment investigators reached for it. Not naturally, not through neglect, but deliberately. And that raised a terrifying question. Was Rowan preparing to vanish? Or was someone else erasing him with surgical precision? Because in the world of billionaires, disappearing isn't always an accident. Sometimes it's a strategy, sometimes it's a threat, and sometimes it's the final step in a plan no one was ever meant to understand. By the time agents realized his financial world had been dismantled piece by piece, it was already too late. The man was gone. His money was gone, and the only proof he ever existed had been reduced to a handful of unexplained anomalies. Money may leave a trail, but for Alexander Rowan, that trail didn't just stop. It was erased by someone who knew exactly where every single footprint would be. Thanks for tuning in. If you're as intrigued as we are, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. See you then. Private jets are supposed to be the safest way to travel. They're tracked, monitored, logged, and supervised by multiple aviation systems all at once. A commercial plane might vanish into the ocean, but a billionaire's jet, linked to encrypted transponders and private radar networks, should never simply disappear. And yet, that is exactly what happened. This is the story of the private jet paradox. On the night Alexander Rowan vanished, his Gulfstream G800A75 million-dollar aircraft equipped with the most advanced flight telemetry on Earth left the private terminal at Teterboro Airport at 9:46 p.m. The flight plan was completely routine, a direct route to Bermuda. Clear weather, no conflicts in the airspace. The co-pilot filed everything normally. The ground crew reported nothing unusual. The engines ran flawlessly. The jet accelerated, lifted off, and climbed smoothly into the night sky. But something strange was already happening. At 9:52 p.m., just 6 minutes after takeoff, the plane's secondary transponder briefly flickered. It was just a fraction of a second, a tiny blink. Controllers at first dismissed it as a routine electrical fluctuation, until they realized the signal didn't just glitch. It changed. It shifted to a code used only during software updates, something that should never, ever happen mid-flight. Then came the second anomaly. The jet climbed to 31,000 feet, leveled off, and then suddenly began drifting 5 degrees off its flight plan. This wasn't enough to raise immediate alarms. Private jets deviate all the time due to winds or turbulence, but this one drifted smoothly, almost mechanically, as if it were following an invisible rail through the sky. At 10:04 p.m., the paradox became undeniable. All three tracking systems monitoring the Gulfstream, the FAA radar, the ADS-B satellite tracking, and the jet's own proprietary encrypted beacon registered the aircraft in 3 different locations at the exact same time. Think about that. 3 positions, 3 impossible coordinates, 1 aircraft. Investigators later called it a triangulation collapse, something only seen during severe atmospheric disturbances. Except the sky that night was perfectly calm and empty. And then, at 10:07 p.m., the jet simply ceased to exist on the grid. There was no crash signature, no mayday transmission, not even a descent pattern. It was just a clean cut, as if someone reached out and pressed delete on a machine built specifically to resist that very thing. Search teams were deployed within an hour. The Coast Guard, private contractors, satellite services from 2 major corporations, everyone was looking. They found nothing. Not a single piece of debris, not an oil slick on the water, not even a floating seat cushion. The jet had vanished with mathematical precision. The paradox only deepened when investigators reviewed the hangar footage from before takeoff. Inside the cabin, filmed just minutes before departure, Rowan's briefcase, the one he famously carried everywhere, was missing. But the seatbelt in his usual seat was buckled. Neatly, carefully, almost as if it were staged. Some speculated that he boarded the plane and someone removed the briefcase. Others believed the opposite, that he never stepped on board at all. But one detail chilled investigators the most. Private jets don't have black boxes like commercial planes. They rely on real-time satellite telemetry. This means the only record of Rowan's final moments exists in corrupted data that someone, somewhere, may have manipulated before anyone even noticed he was missing. Whoever orchestrated this didn't just interfere with a plane. They rewrote reality for 7 minutes, just long enough to make an entire aircraft vanish without leaving a single scratch on the world. The jet should have been found. Every system was designed to ensure it, and yet, the very machines meant to track the aircraft became instruments of confusion, producing conflicting data, contradictory coordinates, and a digital void exactly where Rowan was supposed to be. The private jet paradox wasn't simply a disappearance. It was a message. A clear, chilling statement that someone knew how to bend aviation systems, financial networks, and surveillance grids to their will. Someone knew the perfect moment, the perfect angle, and the perfect 7-minute window to make a billionaire disappear without ever laying a finger on him. What do you think happened? Let me know your theories in the comments below, and if you enjoy mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching. Power protects you, until the day it doesn't. Men like Alexander Rowan don't just live in our world, they operate above it. In private spheres the public never even sees. They move markets with a single phone call, rewrite laws with a signature, and bury scandals before they ever break the surface. Their circle is small, insulated, and very carefully built. But when a man like that vanishes, the silence he leaves behind is far more revealing than the noise he used to create. In the days after Rowan's disappearance, his inner world began to crack. The advisors, partners, and allies who once moved like a well-oiled machine suddenly shifted into survival mode. Some went quiet, too quiet. Others became surprisingly talkative, offering rehearsed statements that were dripping with stress. The first real sign that something was deeply wrong came from a former associate. He claimed Rowan had expressed concerns in the weeks leading up to his final flight. Concerns about deals moving too fast, about numbers that didn't add up, and about trust that was slowly evaporating. Then, a second clue emerged, this time from his own security consultant. According to a confidential briefing, Rowan had ordered a full audit of his communications systems. He wasn't looking for malware or foreign spies, he was looking for internal leaks. Someone inside his own empire had access to things they shouldn't. Someone very close. But here's the thing about power at that level. When it starts to shift, it becomes dangerous. For everyone involved, the more investigators dug, the more fractures they uncovered. There was a shady land development deal in Nevada tied to a web of shell corporations, a technology partnership with undisclosed foreign investors, a political connection that now seemed far too convenient to be a coincidence. On their own, none of these were enough to explain a disappearance. But together, they formed a chilling pattern of quiet conflict, hidden just beneath Rowan's polished public image. People in his circle became cagey, as if they weren't sure which parts of his empire were still safe to even talk about. One partner described him as nervous, but determined during their last meeting. Another said he'd become paranoid. But was it really paranoia? Or was he finally seeing the danger that had been growing all around him for years? One detail kept resurfacing. Rowan was preparing to cut someone out. Investigators found early drafts of a new board restructuring on his encrypted server. These documents would have dramatically shifted power within his organizations. Some partners would gain more influence, others would lose everything. If these changes went through, fortunes would crumble, and alliances that had stood for decades would break overnight. This raised a deeply disturbing question. Did someone decide to act first? When power becomes this dangerous, it attracts attention from places most of us never think about: private intelligence agencies, offshore financial fixers, foreign operatives, and even internal loyalists who believe they're protecting the company. These forces don't confront threats, they neutralize them quietly and permanently. Investigators also noted something else that was absolutely chilling. Rowan's schedule for the week he vanished had been altered. 3 appointments were missing. They weren't canceled or rescheduled, they were erased. It was as if someone had accessed his system and deleted pieces of his life before removing him from it entirely. The only people with that level of access are not strangers. They are the ones you trust the most. The deeper analysts went, the clearer the picture became. Someone close to him had both the motive and the opportunity. But more importantly, they had resources, real resources. Because making a billionaire disappear doesn't start with a plane crash. It starts with information, surveillance, manipulation, a subtle redirection of events until the target unknowingly walks into the perfect trap. And that's exactly what Rowan did. His disappearance wasn't random or chaotic. It was precise, calculated, and coordinated with an intimate understanding of his schedule, his habits, and the vulnerabilities of his private networks. This wasn't a crime of passion or a tragic accident. It was a strategic removal, one that required someone inside his world to open the first door. When power becomes a liability, the people who benefit from it the most often become the ones who fear it the most. And in Alexander Rowan's case, it seems someone in his shadowed empire decided the risk of keeping him around was far greater than the cost of making him disappear forever. Thanks for watching. If you want to follow this story as it unfolds, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Most people imagine wealth as something visible: mansions on the coast, luxury cars, private jets, landing in glossy airports, but that's the world of the rich. The ultra-wealthy inhabit something else entirely, a private ecosystem built on secrecy, influence, and carefully engineered invisibility. It is a world designed not to be seen, and those who live inside it disappear long before they ever go missing. Alexander Rowan was one of those ghosts in plain sight, public enough to be recognized, powerful enough to be feared, but hidden enough that very few people truly understood the scale of his reach. To outsiders, he was a billionaire investor, but internally, he was part of a financial constellation stretching across offshore jurisdictions, private intelligence outfits, and encrypted networks. His global assets were so complex that ordinary law enforcement couldn't even trace them without special permission. This invisible world operates by its own rules. Money doesn't move through banks. It flows through trusts layered inside other trusts, foundations tied to charitable fronts, and holding companies located in places where the laws are written for people like Rowan. These structures have no physical address, no faces, and no accountability. They exist solely to protect their creators from exposure. And in that world, a disappearance doesn't begin with fear. It begins with silence. Investigators trying to follow Rowan's financial footprint quickly discovered something unusual. His wealth didn't behave like traditional assets. Portions of his portfolio were designed to vanish and reappear, shifting between continents like shadows crossing a wall. Ownership documents transferred automatically, board seats reassigned. Entire accounts were emptied the very same morning his jet vanished. These weren't signs of panic, they were signs of automation. It was as if the system was built to continue without him, or without whoever was supposed to take his place. This raised a disturbing question. Was Rowan really in control of his empire, or was the empire in control of him? Because in the ultra-wealth space, power is rarely individual. It is collective, layered, and interdependent. Most of these fortunes are tied to other fortunes, powerful families, government contracts, and geopolitical interests the public never hears about. And when someone in that network becomes a liability financially, politically, or personally, the system reacts. Disappearances in this world don't always involve violence. Sometimes they are legal removals, forced buyouts, blackmail campaigns, or reputation dismantling. Sometimes they are engineered accidents. A plane veering off course isn't always a tragedy. Sometimes it is a final chapter written by people who learned long ago how to erase problems without leaving any fingerprints. Rowan's last month suggests he sensed this threat. His communication audits, sudden asset reorganizations, and attempts to isolate certain partners all indicate a man preparing for something. Maybe a betrayal, maybe a takeover. Maybe he realized he had lost control of the very world he helped build. Because here's the truth, no one likes to admit, the ultra-wealthy Don T live outside the system. They are the system, and systems always protect themselves. Rowan's disappearance exposed cracks in that hidden architecture. Several offshore entities froze operations immediately after his last flight ping. An intelligence contractor quietly cut ties. A major political donor in Texas canceled all public appearances the next day. These are not coincidences, they are signals. They are signals that the people connected to him felt the shock long before the public ever heard his name on the news. In this hidden world, silence is a form of communication. Sudden movement is a confession. And the absence of denial is often the clearest truth you'll ever get. What happened to Alexander Rowan wasn't just the disappearance of a billionaire. It was the collapse of a node in a vast, secret network, one that relied on control and obedience. When someone tries to break those rules, the world they live in doesn't argue or negotiate. It simply removes them. If you found this deep dive interesting, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. Thanks for watching. What do you think is the ultimate currency at the highest levels of global power? Money? Influence? No, it's fear. The fear of losing everything. The fear of being exposed. The fear of becoming the next example of what happens when someone steps out of line. Alexander Rowan, the billionaire who vanished, lived and operated inside a network built entirely on that silent, suffocating threat. We tend to imagine billionaires as untouchable gods, moving freely without consequence. But the reality is far more complex. At that level of extreme wealth, the power structure is like a fragile ecosystem. Every member depends on the others to stay protected and to stay controlled. Alliances are temporary. Loyalty is a commodity. And everyone knows one simple rule. If you become a liability, you become disposable. Rowan's disappearance didn't start when his jet dropped off the radar. It began months earlier. In the invisible corridors of this network, it started with meetings canceled for no reason. Partners who suddenly stopped returning his calls. Lawyers who started speaking in riddles instead of giving straight answers. In his final months of public activity, every move he made looked like a man building walls around himself. This wasn't paranoia, it was recognition. He knew the ecosystem was turning against him. In these circles, fear isn't loud or aggressive. It's quiet, surgical, and meticulously calculated. It spreads through whispers between private bankers, in encrypted messages between corporate boards, and in the sudden, cold shift in tone from people who once swore their allegiance. One day, you are a pillar of the empire. The next, you are a risk that must be neutralized. Investigators spotted this pattern right away. Several of Rowan's key associates took abrupt international trips just days before his jet vanished. All 2 different destinations, all for urgent reasons that couldn't be verified. 3 of his major partners paused joint ventures, citing unforeseen restructuring. These weren't random events. They were protective reflexes, the kind you make when you sense a storm is coming and you need to get out of its path. In this world, fear travels much faster than information. Private security firms, the kind that operate off the books, also reported strange activity. There were requests for discreet surveillance, a sudden interest in Rowan's travel plans, and anonymous clients asking for background checks on his inner circle. All these signals point to one chilling conclusion. Someone, or some group, was preparing for an outcome they either expected or engineered. And then there's the most unsettling detail of all. Rowan's disappearance seemed to conveniently resolve several major disputes that were happening behind the scenes. Messy court battles were quietly dropped, Stalled contract negotiations were suddenly finalized. A massive multinational acquisition that he had personally blocked for years went through without a hitch. When one man's absence benefits a dozen powerful people, investigators don't call it a coincidence. They call it architecture. A network built on fear doesn't need explicit threats. It runs on expectation. Everyone knows what asterisk can asterisk happen, what asterisk has asterisk happened before, and what asterisk will asterisk happen if they misstep. Rowan understood these rules. He benefited from them for years. But in the end, he may have become the very reminder the system needed to reinforce its power. The silence that followed his disappearance is the most powerful weapon of all. When something goes wrong, nothing is said. When someone vanishes, no one asks questions. That silence becomes the warning to everyone else. Stay in line, protect the system, and never ever challenge what you cannot control. Former insiders, speaking anonymously, have described this structure as a circle with no center. There's no single leader, no mastermind pulling all the strings. It's just a network shaped by shared interests, shared fears, and shared consequences. You are protected as long as you serve the group. But the moment you threaten its stability, the circle closes in on you. Whether Rowan deliberately stepped out of line, stumbled upon information he was never meant to see, or simply became too unpredictable, we may never know for sure, but the speed and efficiency with which the system erased his presence suggests this was no accident. It was a reaction, a calculation, a cleansing, because a network built on fear cannot afford any exceptions. Thanks for watching. Every empire has a moment when the illusion of control finally fractures. It's a moment so subtle at first, those living inside it barely notice. For Alexander Rowan's world, that moment arrived on a quiet Monday morning, 3 weeks before he vanished. There were no explosions, no scandals, no catastrophic news cycle. Just a silent, microscopic crack spreading through the machinery of his empire. It started in the data. Rowan's financial analysts detected unusual movements in accounts controlled by his long-term partners. These weren't big withdrawals or frantic activity, but coordinated, precise transfers, all executed within minutes of each other. Money was leaving familiar vaults and reappearing in structures that no longer connected to Rowan's network. To an outsider, it would have looked like normal corporate repositioning. But to Rowan, it was the first sign of a controlled divergence. The people he trusted were quietly securing their lifeboats. Then came the second crack, information leaks. Small at first, confidential documents started showing up in the hands of journalists, analysts, and offshore regulators. Nothing explosive, but just enough to raise questions about internal stability. Rowan had built his empire on secrecy. Even a minor breach was a major red flag. What made it worse was the pattern. These leaks didn't target the empire itself, they targeted him personally. His decisions, his alliances, his pressure points, someone wasn't sabotaging him publicly. They were destabilizing him privately, from the inside out. Rowan reacted exactly how you'd expect a man of his power to react. He tightened control. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Departments were suddenly reshuffled. Emergency audits were launched. But every move he made only revealed more fractures. A senior advisor abruptly resigned after 15 years of loyal service. A key partner canceled a major deal without any explanation. Security reports mentioned unusual external interest, but they carefully avoided naming who was behind it. This was no longer a coincidence, it was erosion. By the second week, Rowan finally understood the gravity of the situation. His empire wasn't being attacked, it was being abandoned, but not with panic. It was happening with the calm, deliberate precision of people who had rehearsed this scenario long before he ever saw it coming. What investigators later found most disturbing was the pattern of silence that followed. Normally, when a billionaire faces this kind of internal turmoil, rumors explode, banks whisper, lawyers speculate, competitors gossip. But in this case, there was nothing. A stunning, unnatural quiet descended. It was as if every major player in his world had collectively agreed not to acknowledge the cracks, not to intervene, and certainly not to help. Silence at that level is never normal. Silence is coordination, and in that deafening silence, Rowan made his most desperate decision. He scheduled a private meeting with 3 individuals known only through encrypted communications, men and women, who operated above the visible corporate world. The shadowy intermediaries between power centers no one publicly admits even exist. The meeting was set for a date and location that remains unknown, but investigators recovered fragments of messages suggesting Rowan believed they could restore the balance. What happened at that meeting, or if it even happened at all, remains one of the deepest mysteries of the case. But what we do know is this. The very next day, Rowan's behavior changed dramatically. His staff reported he looked withdrawn, even resigned, as if he had finally understood the true scale of the storm he was in. Close aides noted that he cleared his entire schedule, erased several personal files, and made a series of private calls that no one has ever been able to trace. And then, for the first time in his entire career, he made a mistake. He flew without his secondary security team. A billionaire of his stature never travels without at least 2 layers of protection. But that day, he boarded his private jet with just a skeleton crew. Whether it was a misplaced act of trust, a decision born of fear, or pure coercion, no one can say for sure. But in retrospect, investigators describe this single moment as the exact point where the empire cracked completely open. Because for the first time, the world's most protected man was finally unprotected. And someone, somewhere, was waiting for that moment. Thanks for watching. If you want to uncover more of this story, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're just getting started. The morning of his final flight, Alexander Rowan walked across the tarmac like a man moving through a dream he couldn't escape. Witnesses later said he looked composed, the way people look when they holding on to something they daren't want anyone else to see. Security footage shows him pausing at the base of the jet stairs, glancing once over his shoulder, as if expecting someone. No one appeared. At 9:42 a.m., the jet's engines ignited, roaring against the cold wind. The flight plan was filed as a short, routine trip, the kind executives use for confidential meetings. Nothing about the paperwork suggested anything unusual, but aviation analysts were quick to point out something strange. Rowan had changed his destination only hours before takeoff. The new endpoint was vague, listed simply as a provisional coordinates entry, a loophole only allowed for high-clearance passengers. Whoever approved it had authority far beyond standard air traffic control. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was unusually cold. Only 3 other people were on board: the pilot, the co-pilot, and a single attendant, whose identity was later classified. Normally, Rowan traveled with a full entourage: legal staff, security, strategic advisors, but today, the seats were empty. Their absence was louder than any presence. The jet lifted off smoothly, rising through clean sky, and disappeared into a veil of thin clouds. At first, everything seemed normal. Communication logs show polite exchanges between the cockpit and the tower, standard altitude reports, course confirmations, nothing to raise suspicion. That is, until the aircraft crossed into a corridor known for limited radar penetration, a dead zone, a place where signals weaken and tracking becomes proximate. That's when the anomalies began. At 10:17 a.m., the jet's transponder flickered. Not off, just unstable. It was an electronic stutter that lasted 23 seconds. Analysts say it was too long to be random, but too short to indicate a failure. It felt deliberate, like a digital blink. When the signal returned, the aircraft was no longer where it should have been. It was veering slightly north, away from the approved route. It wasn't a sharp turn, not enough to trigger alarms, but it was enough for investigators, months later, to recognize it as the first intentional diversion. Inside the cabin, motion sensors, the kind luxury jets use for comfort automation, showed Rowan leaving his seat and walking toward the cockpit. But at 10:19 a.m., all internal cabin logs abruptly stopped, as if someone disabled the system manually. What happened in those next few minutes remains one of the most contested mysteries in modern aviation. Some believe Rowan confronted the pilots. Others claim he received an encrypted external message that forced a course change. A more chilling theory suggests someone else was on board, hiding in a part of the jet not covered by standard sensors. Whatever the truth, the jet made a slow, controlled turn into thickening cloud layers. No distress calls, no mechanical warnings, just a silent deviation. At 10:32 a.m., the aircraft crossed into international airspace, where regulations are looser and accountability becomes negotiable. Investigators later called this the point of no return. The jet, now effectively invisible, was flying through a region often used by anonymous aircraft cargo transports, diplomatic shuttles, and sometimes unregistered flights with unclear ownership. Then came the final anomaly. At 10:41 a.m., the jet transmitted a short data burst, a compressed, encrypted packet that no one has been able to decode. It lasted less than a second. After that, the jet continued flying for another 12 minutes before nothing. Not an explosion, not a crash, not a mayday. Just silence. The jet's radar signature faded as if it was swallowed whole. Not as if it crossed into a space where detection simply wasn't possible. Search teams scoured the projected crash radius for months. They found no debris, no fuel traces, no black box. Frustrated aviation experts admitted the impossible. Planes don't just disappear, unless someone wants them to. The official story ends there. But unofficially, sources say at least 3 intelligence agencies flagged irregular air activity in that region on that same morning, including an unidentified aircraft tailing an S-jet from below the cloud level. If that's true, then this wasn't an accident. It wasn't a malfunction or even a disappearance. It was an extraction, and Alexander Rowan may have known it was coming all along. When Alexander Rowan's jet vanished, the world didn't react right away. There were no breaking news alerts, no flashing headlines, no public statements. Instead, the first thing that disappeared was the noise. A coordinated, suffocating silence fell over every institution connected to him, his companies, his partners, his political allies, even his own family. It was as if someone pulled a curtain down over the entire event, sealing it in darkness before anyone even realized something was wrong. Inside Rowan Industries, employees noticed a shift instantly. Emails were recalled without explanation. Meetings were abruptly canceled. Calendar entries vanished in real time. One executive later described it as watching the system erase him right in front of their eyes. Even more unsettling, the internal security logs for the morning of the flight were wiped completely clean. Not corrupted, not missing, wiped intentionally and uniformly across every single server. Then, at 1:14 p.m., barely 3 hours after the jet's final signal, an unmarked black SUV entered the private garage of Rowan's Manhattan headquarters. Surveillance footage shows 4 individuals stepping out, each wearing identical dark suits that didn't match any known agency uniform. They scanned the parking area, then entered the building through the executive elevator. No one knows what they did inside, but when they left, they were carrying 2 steel cases and a small, encrypted drive. By late afternoon, Rowan's closest associates started receiving phone calls. Not from his office, but from so-called federal representatives who never identified themselves. The message was simple and chilling. Do not discuss Alexander Rowan's travel itinerary. For your own safety, we advise full confidentiality. This wasn't a request, it was an order. Meanwhile, journalists who tried to contact the FAA about an unusual flight event were quietly redirected, stonewalled, or told that the data they were seeking was currently under review. Within hours, the few online aviation forums that mentioned a possible missing private jet found their threads locked, their posts deleted, and their users banned for disseminating unverified information. It was swift, surgical, precise. Rowan's family reacted differently. His daughter reported him missing late in the evening, but instead of being met with concern, she was met with cold, hard protocol. Her call triggered a security escalation she couldn't understand. 2 men arrived at her home within the hour, carrying identification she wasn't allowed to copy or even photograph. They asked questions, took notes, and then told her something terrifying. We recommend you refrain from contacting the press. It could compromise your father's safety, but safety implies danger, and danger implies someone knew far more than they were willing to say. That night, while the rest of the city slept, a quiet alert rippled through global financial monitoring systems. Every account linked to Alexander Rowan was frozen not by banks, but by an entity with a much higher clearance. Billions of dollars in digital assets locked simultaneously. Analysts flagged it as an act of protective containment, a protocol so rare it's almost always connected to national security emergencies. Yet, no emergency was ever declared. Then, just after midnight, the story shifted again. Rowan's name disappeared from several active government contractor databases. His ongoing projects were reassigned. His top-level oversight privileges were revoked. It was as if someone was methodically removing his fingerprints from the very machinery of influence he had spent decades building. This silence wasn't an absence of information. It was the presence of absolute control. At 2:37 a.m., a single encrypted message was sent from an unknown origin to a classified list of government and corporate recipients. It contained just one sentence. Alexander Rowan is no longer operational. No context, no explanation, no follow-up. The next morning, his company released a generic press statement claiming he was on an extended leave, but employees whispered in the hallways. Some claimed his office had been emptied overnight. Others said they saw men carrying out equipment under large white sheets. None of this could be confirmed, because every floor with access to Rowan's work was placed on restricted status, requiring biometric clearance that no one seemed to have anymore. The disappearance of a billionaire should have been a global scandal. Instead, it became a vacuum. A silence so thick that anyone who tried to break it felt the pressure, legal, financial, or something far darker. What remained was an unspoken understanding shared by everyone who brushed against the truth. Rowan didn't just vanish, he was removed. And whatever Tukin wanted the world to forget he ever existed. What do you think happened to Alexander Rowan? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more of this mystery, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Thanks for watching. In the months after billionaire Alexander Rowan's private jet vanished, the strangest thing happened. Nothing. New international outrage, no round-the-clock news coverage, no government task forces. The disappearance of one of America's wealthiest men just faded. It was as if we'd all been trained to accept that people like him could simply be erased. No body, no wreckage, no answers. But just below that quiet surface, things were moving. Silently, methodically, at Rowan Industries, a little-known board member took over as CEO. The transition was immediate, flawless, almost as if it had been planned long before the jet ever took off. Key contracts were suddenly reassigned. Entire research divisions were restructured. It was like the whole company had been holding its breath, just waiting for him to be gone. Then, a disturbing pattern emerged. Intelligence analysts connected the dots. Over the last decade, several other ultra-rich individuals, all tied to sensitive defense projects, had also disappeared. A mining magnate in Nevada, a tech genius in Vancouver, a logistics tycoon in Texas. Each story was different, but the ending was the same. A total information blackout, institutional silence, and a complete digital wipe. Rowan wasn't the first. He was just the most famous. A retired intelligence operative, speaking off the record, called it a clean extraction. He explained that certain billionaires acquire knowledge so dangerous, so destabilizing, that removing them becomes the only option. But were they taken for their own protection? Or were they contained like a virus? The operative's words were chilling. You don't hide a man like Rowan, you quarantine him. But if he was quarantined, from what or from whom? Rowan's daughter refused to let it go. She poured millions into hiring private investigators, cybersecurity experts, even ex-special forces soldiers. But every lead went cold. Every contact who got close suddenly backed off, claiming they were being watched. One investigator sent her a final, cryptic message before he too vanished. Your father wasn't running, he was hunted. Then came the sightings. A man matching Rowan's description was seen entering a restricted research facility in Dubai. A grainy security photo from Singapore showed a man wearing Rowan's one-of-a-kind custom watch. A pilot in northern Canada reported seeing a man who looked like Rowan being escorted onto an unmarked military plane under heavy guard. None of these were ever confirmed, but they were never fully debunked either. The rumors grew darker. Some said Rowan was alive, living under a new identity. Others claimed he was eliminated to stop a catastrophic leak of classified information. The most hushed whispers, shared only behind locked doors, suggested he was taken by a shadow organization that operates above governments, above corporations, and above the law. The truth is, we may never know. What's certain is that Alexander Rowan's legacy is no longer about his wealth. It's about his vanishing. His name has become a cautionary tale, whispered among the global elite, warning that no amount of money can protect you from the forces that move in the shadows. The ultra-rich don't fear losing their money. They fear obscurity. They fear being erased. They fear becoming a ghost. And Rowan became the ultimate ghost. His penthouse sits empty. His office is sealed. His last known moments, his jet disappearing into a storm cloud, have become the final frame of a story with no end. No closure, no truth, no justice. Just an infinite maze of unanswered questions. And perhaps that's the most terrifying legacy of Allah's stark reminder that in the world of power and secrets, the disappearances that matter most are the ones we're never allowed to talk about. Thanks for watching. If you find these kinds of mysteries as fascinating as I do, make sure to subscribe for more.